Okay, colleagues, I think we can start with session 3 for day 2. And our next speaker is Prof. Habib Nurbai. He's currently in the US, but he's originally from UJ, and he's going to present for us live online. We've tested it, so everything works. I hope there's no technological gremlin that has seeped in after we checked. So Habib, once you're ready, you can start sharing and go ahead.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Dr. Rian, for that introduction. It's much appreciated, and greetings to everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you guys are keeping warm. It gives me great pleasure to present you on a very important topic that we're covering, which has a lot of implications, not just for the global south, but even in healthcare in general. And so the topic of my talk centers around AI in healthcare, looking at the potentials, pitfalls, open source, and the global south. Now, in the context of the Olympics, I thought I'll just start with this 100-meter race that was ran in 9.58 seconds. It's the race or the record held by Usain Bolt. And we're going to break down this race in terms of time. And what you'd be able to determine and understand is that Usain Bolt finished it in 9.58 seconds. Tyson Gray came in at 9.71. And Asafa Powell did it in 9.84 seconds. And what we begin to understand is that the difference between the first and the second and third place is 0.13 seconds respectively. And then the difference between the first and the third place, the difference between a gold medal and a bronze medal is 0.26 seconds, which means they are now being separated in milliseconds. But if you take it a step further, we can see that the difference between the first to the last place is 0.76 seconds, which means all of these runners are running under 1 second when they are completing. That sound that you just heard, that's the difference between the first place and the last place runner. And I'll play it again for you so you can just understand how minute this particular difference is. So that's the difference. And so the message for me of why I'm talking about this is because, I want to just to give you an indication of how sport is going to continue to break records within the space and the role of AI in terms of shaping athlete development. But if we have to look at this particular graph, which I computed over a 100-year period, we can from 1920 till now, those are the actual ranges of all the world records that was ran in the 100 years. And then we have an expected range, and that was computed using a logistic regression. And we see, based on the logistic regression, that we were only supposed to achieve the 9.58 second record by the year 2040, which means that after 2000, something happened. A lot of things changed after 2000, which is why people have been so strong in sport performance. But it also tells us that Usain Bolt, as an example, is more than 20 years ahead of his time. More than 20 years ahead of his time to actually come out with a record of 9.58 seconds. And so that's the record. That's the race ran in 10.6 seconds in 1920, and that's what we have right now. And so what does it tell us? That after 100 years, females have gotten 3 seconds faster. They went from 13.6 to 10.54 seconds, and that's the record currently being held by Elaine Thompson. But the males have only gotten 1 second faster in a 100-year period, which is absolutely incomprehensible over a 100-year period. And this can be further broken down. So if you look at the 800-meter freestyle world progression record time, we see that there's a very similar trend line, that the times have improved considerably over the years. And so there's a key message from this, in that records are meant to be broken. Athletes today that continue to perform at a higher level are a few decades ahead of their time. And the key question of this is why? Why are they ahead of their time? And so if you take thousands or hundreds of athletes anywhere in any setting, even in South Africa, and we go through a funnel model and we put all these athletes into a funnel, and all of these athletes are competing on a spectrum of mass sport participation to various talent pathways. What we begin to understand that out of these hundreds of thousands of athletes that are going through this funnel to try and be competitive or professional, only a handful of these athletes will continue to go and compete right at the top, which makes the landscape even more competitive. And so this analogy that you're seeing here is very similar to the healthcare front. We've got hundreds and thousands of patients that are coming into this funnel, and yet at the same time, the ratio of medical professionals to patients is not very good. It's making the landscape a lot more competitive for health systems to deal with. And so the key question then is, well, can artificial intelligence address this particular issue? Can it address this particular challenge, not just in terms of access to healthcare, but the disparity around the concerning ratio of medical professionals to patients? So let's take a step back and have a better understanding of AI. And the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to play a video that's based on a true story when a pilot in New York landed the plane in the Hudson River. Oopsie.
Cactus 15.9, report to the contact line, maintain 15000.
Maintain 15000, Cactus 1549.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds through returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529. Which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines. He said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. We can get it for you. Do you want to try to land runway 13?
We're unable. We may end up in Hudson.
Hi, Cactus 15.9. It's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? You want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire. Actually, LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound.
Hey, got it.
Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge. Wants to go to the airport right now.
One crew hour airport. Check. Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280. You can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
Can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles.
So some of you may recall this, but this was showcased through a movie in which Tom Hanks plays the lead actor Sully, where he was the pilot on that day. It's based on a true story. It happened 14 years ago, and there were no casualties and no one was injured. And the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, felt that this was a little bit controversial in aviation, and so they held a commission of inquiry in Manhattan. And long story short, they wanted to run simulations to determine where the pilots who were doing the simulations were able to, turn around and land on one of the nearby landing strips at LaGuardia or any other nearby landing strips. But Sully came out and spoke about something important, and he said, well, you guys are forgetting the human factor, because when the birds stroke the engines, they had about 5 or 10 seconds to determine what kind of course to take. But the simulations told them that immediately when there was a bird strike, that they had to turn back. And so that 5 to 10 second difference could have made a bit more difference in terms of the delay of what type of decision Sully had to make. And eventually he just decided to take a brave decision to land the plane in the Hudson River. And from this particular story, there are 2 theories that emanate. We can learn about the expertise theory and metacognition. And so Sully displayed both of these theories when landing the plane in the Hudson River. And the expertise theory speaks about, and I quote, The expertise theory demonstrates how skill develops and emerges over time, practice, and repetition through experiential learning, strategy, knowledge, and application. It documents how individuals become experts in their domain or field through a process of cognitive task analysis and portrays the necessary skills and expertise more robustly, effectively, and efficiently than novices. And then to further supplement this, we then begin to understand the next theory. And in sports psychology, we are often taught about several psychological concepts that would govern athletes or high performers to be successful at their particular sport or their particular job. But what we don't realize is that each of these psychological concepts combined together, that basically refers to a concept which is known as metacognition. And so Sully had displayed high levels of metacognition in the expertise theory when landing the plane in the Hudson River, which means that his human expertise was also important, which shows that their simulations, which we can also regard as AI, was not completely 100% in enabling that precision to occur. And so thereby we begin to understand that there's a human AI partnership, that we can't really rely on AI alone. And there is a human factor and human expertise that we have to strongly consider within the healthcare setup. And so collaboration between AI systems and healthcare professionals are imperative. And there's a need to understand that AI is there to augment human capabilities, leading to more accurate diagnoses and better patient outcomes. And this was an op-ed that I had written last year where I communicated that AI cannot replace human expertise at this stage. And I explained this through the 6 E's. And the 6 E's basically refer to enablement and extension, empowerment and enhancement, and education and ethics. That's what AI is there to do. It's there to enable various things within the healthcare sector. It can give us an extension of what was otherwise very challenging if we had to do it ourselves. It empowers us to take things to the next level by optimizing various systems so that things can be more efficient in the healthcare setup. And it enhances our capabilities and skills as health professionals a lot more robustly so that we can address more challenges and to help more patients within the healthcare setup. And in the context of higher education, we can even help more health sciences students. And so from an educational perspective, it's important. And at the same time, ethics is even more important, which I will touch on a bit later. Then when we speak about the different types of applications that AI has, in terms of healthcare, there's various ones from AI and in the diagnostics, medical imaging, clinical trials and new drug development, spatial information systems, AI in medical research, emergency room in surgery, treatment for mental health, nutrition, virtual assistants, and wearable technologies. And I mean, these are a lot of the things that you're already aware about, but we're starting to see that AI has taken the next step in the dimensions of new technologies that are coming to the fore. And I think one of the key questions that we have to ask is that as much as this is happening a lot in the global north, what about the global south, which we will cover in a few minutes. So just as an example, during COVID, we had a number of our biokinetics or exercise physiology students who were not able to go into the lab due to lockdown levels, especially level 4 and level 5 lockdown levels. And so we had to pivot and we had to come up with a new approach in terms of enhancing the learning. And so this was a gamification for biokinetics program that we discovered, that we actually innovated. And what you see here on screen is the web-based game, but then we ported it onto virtual reality. And so the interface that you see here is that we were able to do different types of scenarios and skill scenarios with patients using virtual reality, and particularly the Oculus Quest 2. So this is a stress ECG. That's the spirometry for lung function. That is orthopedic test for the shoulder, knee, and the ankle. This is the Biodex balance, especially for patients who may have any symptoms of neuralgias, or if they have stroke, or this is a particular test that one would be able to do. Then there's manual muscle tests that we can also do from an orthopedics perspective. And the nice thing about the game is that it gives the students some cards, some flashcards that come up in the game, as well as a quiz, and they are able to interact with the gaming elements on a more visual and analog scale. And so if you'd like, you're more than welcome to scan this particular QR code, which will give you more information on the video or the game if you'd like to see it a bit later. But these are the different types of skills that we were able to innovate. And this is one example of how in future, how we might see the integrations of generative AI in virtual reality. And that concept is known as Gen XR, generative AI for extended realities, and the possibilities of around how Gen XR is going to be integrated into the sector of healthcare. And so what you see here on screen is, on the left of your screen is the web-based version of the game, and on the right side of the screen is the virtual reality version of the game. And so what you're seeing is exactly the same scenario, but in two different interfaces. So here you can see the practitioner. That's the practitioner right there with the patient. But in VR, you become the practitioner. The immersion capability is far superior, which enhances understanding for students and especially for education. And so that's just to give you an indication of what the game looks like. And one of the examples of where technology is specifically integrated with AI is going to have an evolving effect on the healthcare sector. So there's three important points. AI is required in the public healthcare sector, especially in South Africa. Now, we know that the adoption rate is not as great as we would like. We've got certain systemic challenges such as load shedding, insufficient budgets, inadequate infrastructure, et cetera, But the most important thing is that AI is required in the public healthcare sector. Integrated AI that is fit for purpose is a very important dimension and theme that has to be inculcated within the healthcare area. And each country has the SDOH's model that has to be considered. But in South Africa, even with AI, it's even more important to always consider the social determinants of health and then build the model up from there. So let's just take a look at the overview of the AI potential. So the potential is that we can see that it has a good potential for early diagnosis, specifically around advanced pattern recognition, which can spot conditions earlier, potentially improving patients' lives. Personalized treatments in terms of tailored treatments and plans based on individuals' patient data. So it's a lot more personal and tailored. Cost reductions in terms of streamlining administrative tasks, optimizing operations, and reducing human errors. Accessibility, remote monitoring and telebiokinetics is an example which can enhance access, especially in underdeserved areas. Research advancements in terms of predictive analytics, data collection and storage, as well as analyzing vast data sets. So these are great potentials. When we're looking at the pitfalls, there's data privacy. So there's an increased risk of data breaches and misuse of personal health information. Bias and fairness. AI can inevitably perpetuate or amplify biases present in the training data, especially if one wants to create machine learning algorithms or models. The training of the data has to be robust. Over-reliance, potential to underutilize human expertise and intuition in decision-making. Regulations, scope of practice, and ethics in terms of challenges in creating university-accepted standards and addressing ethical considerations. Interoperability, diverse systems and standards can hinder seamless integrations of AI solutions. I have to stress that the elephant in the room here, the most important point, is this one right here. Regulations, scope of practice, and ethics. That's one of the key things that we will have to consider around how AI will be integrated within the healthcare context, as well as the role that the Health Professions Council of South Africa will play, as well as other governing bodies around healthcare, as well as allied health professions in South Africa. And it's very important to understand that, a lot of these sustainable development goals may also need to be aligned to the ethos of AI in healthcare, especially SDGs 3, along with SDGs 4, 9, 10, and 17. And I just want to touch on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals from an open source perspective. So I had the distinct pleasure of being invited to the United Nations last month in New York. And it was the OSPO for Good event where they spoke about the role of open source in various settings. And I'd just like to, give a very brief summary of what those 3 days gave us, which might give you some more insight in terms of this particular dimension around AI in healthcare. So they mentioned that challenges and opportunities in managing intellectual property and data is really important in the rapidly evolving AI landscape. How do we bridge the balance between IP for certain sectors as well as using certain things as open source? They also highlighted the risk of using generative AI for code creation, such as inevitably using competitors' code, and emphasized the need for privacy, trust, and security, which also then aligns to those key principles of ethics, which I spoke about. They also mentioned that although we're speaking a lot about the Global South, quite a few people mentioned that we need to consider revising the term Global South to global majority, which I really liked. And so the global majority that we as South Africans currently reside in, we face significant challenges, including skills and talent gaps, limited access to data and resources, as well as a lack of national strategies for AI development. Universities and industries must collaborate to address the ethical concerns and tailor AI development across several domains. Open source is also a culture. That's what they mentioned. It's not just something that you do. It's a culture and it's a mindset. And they said that the open source culture is crucial for innovation, especially in complex areas. The importance of creating frameworks for data accessibility and encouraging private sector sharing through public governance was stressed. And lastly, it also addressed the brain drain from academia to industry and the need to develop AI ecosystems in the global majority to retain skilled graduates. So I'm not sure if that's the case at Mandela University, but in other universities in the global majority, that certainly is the case. Finally, calls for collaboration beyond profit motives, fostering a culture of transparency and accountability in AI development. So that's basically the highlighted points that came out from this particular meeting. And on that note, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I apologize for going over the time limit. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Prof. Nurbai. Any questions for Prof from the floor or online? For those online, you can either raise your hand or type your question in the chat. Does not seem like that. They have some food for thought, Habib. Thank you very much and enjoy your day.
Pleasure. Thanks very much for having me. Take care.
Bye. So we're moving over to the second last talk for today, and we're going to invite our very good faculty librarian to the front to come and tell us about the Sunlick Agreement. If you ever need any help with struggling to find something, you can email Ms. Bavuma, and she will be able to either guide you how to find it and teach you a skill, or she might just send you a link and say, here it is. Okay, so please do not forget that name, Mrs. Bavuma.
Good afternoon for those of you who are here, as well as those who are online. As Dr. Rian has said, my name is Nobuzwe. I am the faculty librarian of health sciences. So this afternoon, what I am going to talk about is for those of you who would like to publish, but we know that publishing an article is very expensive, but there has been I would say a movement in terms of now the institutions, all higher education institutions have been able to have transformative agreements where the emerging researchers as well as the researchers are able to waiver the article processing charges. So this is what we call the transformative agreements, or also known as the read and publish agreements. And this has been done through what we call the consortium, which is the South African National Library and Information Consortium, which normally negotiates for all the higher education with the publishers. And by doing so, instead of having an individual higher education going to a specific publisher to negotiate a contract, but if they do the bulk of it, we get a major discounts on that. Okay, so the content, I'm just going to explain what are the transformative agreements and the type of open access that we have, and also the current transformative agreements that the institution has. Okay, so the transformative agreements. Okay, so in order for readers to access the articles in the olden days, usually the library would have to subscribe to a particular journal or a database. Then you would have that. But because now there has been a movement in terms of open access, now the business model has actually changed where we still subscribe to those journals, but at the same time, the publishers has made it possible for people to actually publish via the open access. So it's the contract that has been negotiated between the institutions. So in our case, in South Africa, it's been done through SANLIC, as well as the publishers, where the business model has actually has transformed into that people are able to publish on the open access model. So this agreement enables researchers from participating institutions to actually publish on an open access articles, which is available, where you won't be able to pay the article processing charges. So we've got two types of open access that we currently have. We've got the gold open access. So gold open access actually means that all the articles are available free online, where people can read them, can also download them under the Creative Commons license. But with the gold open access, there is normally an article processing fee attached to that. So for those of you who would actually like to publish on the gold, then which means that you still have to pay the APC, but on some of the agreements, as I will show you or demonstrate later on that, but there is a discount on that. And then the hybrid open access. So the hybrid is actually in two folds. One of them is the articles are actually available, but through the subscriptions, and others are actually available on the open access, which means they are actually available for free. Okay, but the nice thing about this one is all the APCs are actually waived, so they are actually covered under these agreements. Now, if you, let's say, for instance, you do decide to actually publish via the hybrid, okay? Your article might be available on the open access, but sometimes the publisher will see that you are actually downloading out, or there is a more demand for your article, so it's actually gaining more traction from. So they might actually decide that they might take that away and actually put it on the subscription. So it might not be available freely for the reader, but for you, you won't be able to pay the APC. So that's the difference between the gold as well as the hybrid open access. And then the Nelson Mandela University actually has the current 11 transformative agreements via SANLIC for researchers as well as the emerging publishers. So I'm not going to read all of them, but I would like to note on that, you will see that I've actually put the years in brackets. So that means that is the current license agreements that we have. So for the American Chemical Society, the current agreement will expire in 2025. And let's say, for instance, for Emerald, it will expire this year. So I'm assuming that SANLIC will go back to Emerald and negotiate a new contract if they agree. So for Science Direct, which is Elsevier, it also expires in 2025. I would like to also make it known that each of the business models are different. Like, for instance, there are caps, article caps for each year. Like, for instance, Science Direct might say They are allowing about 2,000 articles to be published within this year where they will waiver the APC. Now, if you would like to, let's say you submit your article and you are 2001, so the 2001, so they will let you know. Unfortunately for this year, the APC's max has been reached. You can only qualify the following year unless, of course, you are going to cover the APC yourself. Okay, that's how it should do. And also the important part of this is you must be affiliated with the institution, meaning that when you do the submission to the institution, to the publishers, you must make sure that you are using the Mandela University email address. That's how it's going to do. And then we are going to receive the email from the publisher just so that we can verify. Sometimes we do work close to in hand with the research office as well, so that we do that verification so that the final approval from the publisher is done. And also just to note, if you say, for instance, you are collaborating with other researchers from other institutions, in order for the transformative agreements to be effective, you have to be the corresponding author, okay? But yeah, you have to be the corresponding author, meaning that you have to be the one to do the submission and all of that stuff so that this the transformative agreement is effective. Now, I would just like to do a live demonstration for you to show you where you can get these transformative agreements.